Welcome to another BBA Roundtable Discussion. Today we're going to explore the Building Safety Act and specifically the construction supply chain's expectations post-implementation. So to start us off, maybe I can come to you, James, and ask, well, what are the outstanding challenges that you face in your sector of the industry?
I think one of the key challenges will be resource and upskilling an existing resource, attracting new resource to the industry. The knowledge gap is widely publicised for many a year now, where it's an ageing industry and there isn't as much attraction for the younger generations to join the construction industry. So I think one of the challenges that we will have to face as an industry, regardless of it not specifically being identified per se, would be educational bias, I think, towards the industry. I think from a young age, people aren't encouraged per se to join the construction industry and the wide variety of professionals involved. And people tend to drive their own crusades, individual organisations going to schools or educational establishments to try and encourage that. But it's still, unfortunately, typically referred to as, are you a builder? Yes or no, plumber, bricklayer, you're a bit disruptive in the class, you should go on an apprenticeship. It's very stereotypically a broad brush, but I think people are turned off for the industry at a very young age. So I think we're going to have to address that to sort of stimulate the industry and try and plug some challenges going forward. I think there's going to be challenges with meaningful engagement with the residents. You get a plethora of different residents in the homes, in HRBs, and they all have their own cultural backgrounds, preferences, skill sets, knowledge, awareness. Are they all going to meaningfully engage with the managing agent in ensuring that building is maintained correctly, allowing people to enter their home or check the fire door and the front entrance door where they might feel that's a bit of an invasion on privacy, will be an ongoing challenge, I think. Competency, of course, without a doubt, that will be an ongoing challenge that the industry has to face into. Professional bodies are encouraged by the competency committee to try and put forward how they think they can measure competency. That's a very, very complex area. I'm pleased I'm not the person coining that for the industry per se, but certainly everyone has to come to the table and offer the solution to that. But I think first and foremost, the culture and behaviour, right? I mean, that without that changing, people will continue to race to the bottom, make poor decisions during procurement, change things on site without recording what they've changed, without seeking suitably competent advice in changing that. So ensuring that people do take accountability for what they do and ensuring that everyone is aware that there's a process to that, and gone are the days where they can just make a change on site and continue with productivity. You know, if you are changing something, anything to do with that safety case, you're expected to stop. And I think there will be some examples by the building safety regulator. I think they'll be required to sort of lead by example and put some enforcement action to again sharpen people's focus to say you need to behave in a slightly different way moving forward, and I'm going to come to hold you to account if you don't.
Sure. And Neil, I saw you nodding at a few of the points that James was making. Do you agree with some of what he was saying?
Oh, absolutely. Resources, capacity. If I took fire engineers, there's such a short supply of people that have devoted themselves to learning about fire engineering, and we need probably 3-4 times the amount to keep industry getting the answers that they need if they're going to be properly engaged throughout the life of contracts. But that pipeline is very thin. You know, there are 5 or 6 universities providing fire engineering related degrees, and people don't find it sexy. It's not attractive, as James said, it's not drawing people towards it. The Competence Steering Group have done some sterling work in getting all the sectors to look at frameworks to determine what competence might look like for that area. But unless people are learning, tested and committed through their culture to deliver that, we've got some real challenges in front of us.
Right, so that I can hear the common thread there, so to speak, that recruiting, attracting people into the industry with the right level of competence.
Well, we're about to see it as well. You mentioned fire consultants, and that's a horrendous position we're in, I think, from an industry perspective, certainly moving forward. But building inspectors as well, right? So setting up what this new test measure would look like, and then trying to get what is quite already thin, but through that training program to become on that registered list to say you can do that, and then the government not outsourcing that. So the BSR carrying out that building control activity or service, if you will, and not relying on AIs to do that, approved inspectors, I can't see happening, right? I think, there is too many HRBs in existence that need inspection during occupation, and too many to be reviewed during the build stages. So they will absolutely need to lean on those approved inspectors, but that I can't really see how they're paving the way to do that yet. So there's some assumptions, but certainly needs to be firmed up.
And Tim, for you in manufacturing, is that the same limiting factor? Is that the same challenge that you're facing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think resources across the construction industry is an absolute common theme. I think if we take it one step further as well, assuming that we can make it a little bit more sexy and we can attract more people into the industry, we then have a big competence issue. And the frameworks that we have within the industry to train people and to make them competent within the roles that they do, not just manufacturing, but throughout the whole construction supply chain, is absolutely critical. I will say, I think that government-funded schemes and NVQs and construction skills courses have come a long way in the last few years. I think independent trade associations around specific sectors of the construction industry have invested heavily in frameworks and training mechanisms. But I think as an industry, for me, that's critical. We're losing people on a daily basis that are time served, hugely experienced engineers, product manufacturers, and the replacement of those is just too slow. And we need, as an industry, to invest heavily in training and competencies in order to build the blocks that we need to get to where we want to be.
And in fact, our previous roundtable discussion really focused on how we can make the industry more attractive to people that haven't been attracted before. So it was a real focus, so well worth a watch. So from your point of view, David, in the construction industry as well, what are the other challenges?
So we've already touched on tolerances. I mean, I see tolerances as being a huge ongoing challenge for the construction industry. So we get products that come out of a manufacturer specified by an architect, put in place on a drawing or a detail, to tolerances by a structural engineer, and then the guys who've got to go and build the building discover that they haven't put it in the right place or whatever else it was, and overcoming those discrepancies and those tolerances is going to be a massive challenge going forward. And how are we going to do that? There is more testing and certification required, no doubt at all. Is the capability out there in the market at the present moment? No. To get a fire test done or a hose test done on a new product, you can be waiting nearly 6 months. And in the construction industry, we haven't got that time to be waiting around for that. So we do need more testing and certification capability out there in the market. And we need a great deal better understanding between all the parties involved and all the stakeholders on how we can make tolerances of products work and how you can get that sort of buy-in or collaboration that we've already talked about. Because it is important. It is important there's some understanding. We've gone through this absolute guillotine drop of no flammable materials on a building, and subsequently you've got no interlayer on a glass window that I'm sitting here scratching my head about, thinking, well, hang on a minute, it's a completely inert product. That material that's on the inside of it can't possibly be causing any fire risk. But go figure if that's what we want. So we're putting steel panels on the outside of buildings now instead of putting glass in where it should be. And I think the other thing we talked about, competence, definitely. How do we get that upskill? How do we make that easier and quicker to happen? Can we introduce, for example, a skills certification scheme? I know Lang O'Rourke had a procedure in place a long time ago where, you know, graduates are getting all sorts of schemes. My previous company, Costain, as well, had a similar thing. You know, do we get a card system like the CSCS card or whatever, so someone comes to a site, you know that they've already got a passport of being able to do that skill and install it. And I think the material compliance thing is also going to be a huge challenge for us going forward. So and it might well be that the UK manufacturing industry is up to speed and knows about it and is aware of it. What's going to stop the risk of products arriving from somewhere else, cheaper, but not meeting the compliance standards, but coming with the test certifications? And I'm a contractor. We look out in the market. We look into the Middle East, we look into the Far East and whatever for products that are around that will beat what is a very price-driven market in the UK, supply and demand, and get given certifications and standards and whatever. How can we actually prove that they are fully 100% compliant? You know, do we believe in that and whatever? So I think that's another major challenge that we've got.
Sure. And so, Nick, from your point of view, listening to all of these challenges, what's your view? What's your take on the outstanding challenges?
As the UK's construction product regulator, I recognise all those, but clearly as the regulator, I think we would identify other challenges too. That I think it's maybe many, like others. So, you know, my list is probably long, but I'm going to pick maybe 2 or 3, if you allow me, that maybe haven't been mentioned now, just to show the breadth of challenges we do face. One is, you know, the industry is facing big new challenges. One is net zero future home standards. That is going to see a lot of new and innovative products coming to the market. But from the product regulator perspective, we can't allow that, there to be any trade-off in safety in those products coming to market and allowing latent risk to be built into the buildings of today to put residents and consumers at risk in the future. So new innovative products would probably be certainly in my top 10. Another would be, you know, as a regulator, we pride ourselves on being a risk-based regulator. Our enforcement decisions are based on sound risk-based decisions, but ultimately that needs a good sound evidence base. And we heard earlier in the talk, we lack data, we lack a lot of sound evidence. There was very limited places as the construction product regulator we can go to find data on incident, on non-compliance. There isn't a culture of people sharing information of when they've made a mistake and built something in and what they've done about it. There are a few examples. I mean, Cross UK are one example. We can go and look in Cross UK and find some excellent information on fire and structural safety. But, you know, there are many other risks as well and many product types that we don't see there. So we need better evidence. The third one thing, if you allow me, just to pick up, and throughout the discussion, we focused on product information and the need for that to be accurate, reliable, so that all players can use it to build and design buildings safely. We need to improve it, enhance it. The industry have taken some good ownership, and there is a scheme called the Code for Construction Product Information, CCPI, that is in early days. It is good to see it's an industry-led thing, but if schemes like that can come along from industry, with the industry taking the lead to drive up standards in product information, they will go a long way, to allow the industry to take ownership of the product information challenge.
And Bill, from your perspective and, as BBA, how can you help support the industry with resolving some of these outstanding challenges?
I think we can always provide a table to come to have the discussion. And it might sound a simple thing, and these are complex issues, but we can always do that. Through the certification that we offer, that needs to be developed and adapted to meet need. The needs are changing. We've heard that on a number of fronts. What Nick needs, what the building safety regulator needs is moving, it's changing. So let's have the dialogue, take that away from this afternoon to develop that. But I think just to round up a little bit, are we at that stage, Tony? I think there's some quite Actually, I'm going to do this slightly different. I'm going to start from a bit of a sandwich, start with some things that are more positive. What do we not need? What's not left over to do? And I think something I'm seeing very clearly is that there is a higher risk culture coming into the industry. There's an attitude of mine. I've worked over nuclear, chemicals, rail, air, a number of high hazard sectors, and I'm starting to see the ethos of that appearing in the discussion now in the construction industry in a way I didn't do 10 years ago. And I think also the industry, through the legislation, is becoming sufficiently structured that we can actually regulate it, and we're getting a strong regulator. So, both of those are sea changes, and I think are very positive. Around the table, we've talked about some interesting things about residents, if you like, the operators. We're not building a facility like a chemical plant that's operated by employees who you can manage in a certain way. It's by residents, and James made that point. Key skills lacking, and I would add to the list we've talked about this afternoon, the integrators, people can actually pull things together, so take a product as a single entity into a product as an entity within a system. It's a key skill, and I think we need to see that. And we've talked, Nick helped us there talking about validation. So what else have we got? Well, plenty. The construction industry is going to cease to be a place for the willing but unskilled. And I've worked all my career actually on construction sites, although I don't sit in that role now. And I've seen some great people, but they've not been brought up as professionals in a professional industry. They've come to the industry perhaps late in their career, perhaps through being displaced and coming to a different country, and it's something that they can do, so they do. But I think that may shift, and I think that social purpose that the industry fulfills is something to be thinking about. We definitely need a new knowledge base in the industry. Health of buildings, or the health of occupants within buildings, is something that isn't addressed by the legislation. We touched on environmental, and it's the same sort of agenda to think about. So that's going to come over the horizon. And we need to embrace the whole digital and AI journey. If you look at aero and aerospace and automotive, they just work and think in a different way as an industry. The level of detail that they go to is completely sea change from what we do. Now, can we do that on a building by building basis? Probably not. But if we get to a more systemized approach, perhaps a more platform orientated approach, then we certainly can. So I think there's something there. We just need to take that outside the room and work on it. But I'm going to finish very much with a positive, is that the opportunity is, I'm looking forward to working in a family here. I'm not sensing that anymore. I'm sensing a group coming together, and I personally, and I'm sure all of us, look forward to that across the construction industry.
Thank you. Well, thank you to you all for your really valuable inputs this afternoon.